Good morning and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. We are today on episode number 118, and we have Ryan back with us. We're so excited. We're going to continue our conversation with Ryan Norris from Open. We talked about the fact that in Australia, they're using the open offer process for the last couple of years. This is still relatively new to us. It was introduced December 1st. But I think you guys are onto something. I've enjoyed our conversation. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the future, what you see happening in the market, and how this is really going to change how properties are sold and what kind of transparency and open of information this is going to bring to the sellers in the Canadian marketplace.
Awesome, fantastic to be here again. Thank you. Good to see you both.
Ryan, one thing I'll be remiss if I don't bring this up because I meant to bring it up in an earlier podcast. We had a friend that lived in Australia. I think it was Melbourne area, and he moved back to Canada about 6, 7 years ago and had to sell his property there, and he couldn't get it sold, but it was an auction process.
Hmm?
So I don't know if there was an option at the time to have an auction or if that's just the way it was done in the Melbourne region. Like, that's a totally different type of system
Mhm.
than we have here. But I think in an auction, but you really have to be very transparent and show this is the property. Here's all the warts. Here's all the information. Everybody gets all the information. Then you're just sitting back waiting for someone to make a bid, right?
Yeah, so the Melbourne market, it never ceases to amuse an Australian how North Americans say the word Melbourne, but
What's the
the
proper way?
Melbourne.
Oh,
It's that. But the Melbourne market specifically is an auction centric. There is quite a bit of auction in Melbourne specifically, a little bit in Sydney as well. Those two cities are sort of really the only, and maybe there's a city of Adelaide where there's a little, um, but I mean in vast majority of transactions, we would be dealing with a fairly small percentage of overall transactions, even in those cities. I would say it does become more in when market conditions are hot, and there's more confidence in competition, emerging between buyers. But it is, it's and maybe that talks to, even though the percentage is very small, the the understanding of the power of competition, potentially by virtue of having that some level of exposure to auction because of those markets. So there's a bit of a misconception because of some of the TV shows. I think that it's how it's done in Australia. That's some of the conversations I've had with industry here have been of the opinion that that's how every property is transacted in Australia, and I've said no, that's a long way from the truth. The markets where open started, auction is, I'd go as far as to say it's frowned upon. It's not it's it's pretty unpopular. Um,
In
so
a lot of
yeah.
respects, Ryan, it's it's really no different than what you guys are doing. The only difference is the time, right? You have a very small period of time to get your bid in. But I completely agree with you. I think it's a disservice to the seller a lot of the times because I mean you're trying to create that small interaction, that scarcity mindset in a small group with a smaller group of people in a smaller time frame to hopefully drive the price up. And sometimes it works, but I think what you guys are doing is kind of like an auction environment, but you're just allowing more time for people to actually get their bid in and expose the property
I,
properly.
I think the key difference is that you're not compelled to use it's like it's creating an environment where you can take your buyer pool and go and create a shootout auction like environment between those buyers if you want to. It's just creating that you know previous podcast we talked about gamification. Um, you know, it's allowing you if you've got a buyer pool that where you think, okay, this buyer pool, these guys would go into competition against each other. I've got a bunch of people here who really want this property and they got money. Um, why wouldn't you create from there a a competitive situation? And so that's ultimately what the platform provides. It's not, you're not committed to that process from day one of your campaign. Do things the way you've always done them, receive your offers, that's great. But when the circumstances appear in front of you where as the seller's representative, you think you're going to get a better outcome through creating that exciting but also fair. I always like to make sure we clear that all the buyers are always playing by the same rules. And why would you deny yourself? The tech now exists to make that possible. And these sellers pay a lot of money to sell their property. They should have the best tech. They should have the best tech available to get them the best outcome.
So it's basically a seller with this on the advice of seller's agent saying, you know what, there's a lot of people, a lot of potential buyers sniffing around this property. We think there'll be a lot of interest. So it's choosing that we're going to hold back offers type of strategy and announcing that on the platform. We're going to hold offers until Sunday or whatever. Let everybody come, do their walkthrough, do their inspection, put their offers together, and then it's going to be on the platform, as opposed to just taking the offers as they come in and looking at them. So, when you think you have that little market created for your property, then you use the platform to enhance the process.
Spot on. So let's say we're going to delay presentation of offers until Sunday, Friday, whatever it might be. Blind bidding situation. We sit down with our seller, and what do? We want to either accept one, we want to counter, or we want to reject them all, I guess, is our options. With open, same options, but we've also got the capacity to say to our buyers, hey, listen, it was close. Rather than have somebody really disappointed that they've just missed out, or and the successful buyer question, have they paid too much? We're actually going to facilitate a fair process by which you can make an informed decision and see what you're up against. And so you've got you've got all the same things that you can do today, plus more options to help you.
Ryan, one thing I wanted to get into, and we haven't spoken about this on any of the episodes that you were on, is how this is going to help avoid complaints from other agents that have submitted unsuccessful offers on properties, right? And one situation comes to mind. I think last week we had a house listed in Mississauga that generated 85 offers. Now, this house is listed about $300,000 under market value. I can just imagine that in that offer process, there's going to be some complaints. And what's interesting is that the house, in my opinion, didn't really sell for over market value. It sold for market value, right? And in my head, I keep going back to this software and your platform, and I keep thinking to myself, if only they used open with 85 offers, not only would the offer management be far easier, but it would also eliminate the whole process of complaints, right? And I think, if everybody saw that the house is really only selling for market value with 85 interested people in the market or having their hand in the pot, I think we would see a completely different selling price.
I totally agree. I agree on all fronts. I think the offer management process for that agent, goodness knows what format she was using. I believe it was a female agent. I think who I haven't spoken to her. I don't know too much other than the same sort of details that you've just given me, but managing the paperwork would have been presumably an absolute nightmare. Now, my understanding is that she was, um, by virtue of legislation in Ontario, she was committed to give all of those buyers up-to-date information about how many other offers there are. So she's got to, now there's 7, now there's 8, now there's 9. Like goodness knows how she actually managed to keep to fulfill her obligations on that front. The platform would, even without any transparency of offer information, the platform would have made her life an enormous amount easier. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer's agent, here's a link. Use this link to submit to me your offer information. I'll have a look at it and I'll verify it if I don't see any problems. That's the process of receiving those offers. Once she verifies, the relevant information is shared with all stakeholders automatically. Dare I say a simpler process with respect to the transparency. I say to our real estate agent users in Australia, where the best predictor of how happy your seller is going to be with the price is not where your first offer comes in. It's the number of offers that you get. The number of offers will take care of your outcome. So,
and the experience, of the whole experience, the selling experience is also really paramountly important. It's something we don't talk about often enough, but what is the seller going to remember? Are they going to remember that you got them $2,000 more in price, or are they going to remember that the whole offer process was smooth, transparent, was enjoyable, that there were no complaints at the end of it, that people didn't egg the house, right? Because with 85, they did an interview with the agent at the end, and she said, well, in hindsight, I probably would have done things a little bit differently, right? But I think, if she was to use open in this situation, I think the outcome would have been very different as well on both the experience of everybody that brought the offer, the seller experience, and the agent experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And we're asking price, as you say, you think it was about $300,000 under. Makes it very difficult to gauge. Where should we come in as a new buyer? At what level should we come forward here? If the information was there of, hey, the highest offer is at this amount, problem solved. So yeah, it's a great case study for sort of really sort of spelling out the benefit of what we're bringing.